is the September 20th, 2022 meeting of the Acushnet Library Board of Trustees. We are being audio taped and videotaped, and we do have a quorum. Our first item on the agenda today is the Secretary's minutes from August 30th. Does anyone have any clarifications or questions on those minutes? If not, we need a motion.
Motion to accept the minutes of August 30th.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Moving on to the budget.
Okay, so you have the budget as of today for FY23. We've had 5.5 payrolls this fiscal year, so the salary lines are right where we would expect them to be. And I think operating is where it is expected to be as well. We've had 3 Eversource bills so far, and all have been higher than this time last year. Usage is about the same, but bills are definitely higher, which we expected, and that's why we put a little more into that energy line for this year. We are continuing to see shipping delays with our print materials vendors, but we're still spending at about the same pace as last year. So we're seeing delays, but it's not too different from last year, I guess. So our main materials vendor, Ingram, the warehouse that we receive the majority of our material from is based out of Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, and that just went fully automated as of about 2 weeks ago. So they're expecting that the delays we've been seeing, which were primarily caused due to lack of warehouse workers, that we will start to see a faster turnaround time, which would be great. One potential downside is that today when we received about 60 items that we had been waiting quite a while for, a lot of them had damage to either the spines or the pages, which could be because they're using automated equipment versus humans. I'm not sure, so we have to reach out to them and sort of figure out how. They'll send us replacement copies, I'm sure, for the ones that need it. Some of them just require us putting some heavy books down on top of them to flatten out some crinkles in the pages. But anyway, I'm curious to see how that will go, because the benefits of the faster delivery or faster processing might mean some damaged material.
How many were damaged, would you say, of the 60?
Not even 20% of them, I would say, but enough that we were like, oh, look, here it is again, and take a look at this, and what do you think we can do for that? So it was enough that we were having a conversation about it, and then in the conversation, so it was probably 10 of the 60 items.
Yeah.
Which is really probably not that bad, but before we would very rarely have any, noticeable binding damage, or today there were even some cuts to the tops of pages of books, so as if something got caught and ripped the pages. So anyway, it will be interesting to see how that progresses. And maybe it was just a fluke, and it'll be fine once they sort out the kinks with that new system that they have. But other than that, in terms of the budget, I think we're where we should be for whatever month we're in of 2022, whatever September. Where are we? Yeah, for September 20th, I think we're good. So unless you have any specific questions.
How late are the delays?
Roughly. So prior to COVID, if I were to place an order for books that were being released on September 20th, because books are typically released on Tuesdays, if I placed that order by mid to late August, we would have those books on September 20th. But sometimes a week and a half before, which was great because we could process them and have them available to release to the public on the published date, which is something that our very active readers are expecting from us when they place holds. They're expecting to get it the same day they can get it in a store or have it shipped to their home. So we've taken a lot of pride in how we order materials to get that happening. So now we're seeing, all the new books that arrived today have pub dates of September 6th, September 13th, a couple from today, but they were ordered well enough in advance that we should have those September 20th release dates today. And we should have received some September 27th even so that we'll have those ready for next week. They're also only shipping once a week, and they will only ship if your order has more than $50 available to ship. That's a new thing that Ingram is doing.
Okay.
So we don't know how that's going to play out with delays, and I think that's going to have to change my ordering schedule. Before, I would typically order, our ship date is Friday, so on Thursdays I would typically place orders, and I would order adult, young adult, children all on the same day approximately. I'm thinking I'm going to have to change that method so that I'm ordering adult, and then the following week I'm ordering children, so that we're consistently having $50 worth of material that can ship for the pub date. So I'm going to have to experiment with that and see how that goes, and if that works, and then take it from there. So the delays are not terrible delays for the most part,
right.
but it's enough that it changes our advertising of New Book Tuesday, which is something we've been doing, Sandra and I've been doing for years. You know, I order the books, she processes them, and she creates the advertising material for New Book Tuesday. And you can't very well call it New Book Tuesday when they came out 2 weeks ago.
And you don't have
because Barnes and Noble's New Book Tuesday looks different than our New Book Tuesday. So
well, hopefully, like you said, that it's all gonna iron
between
itself
the
out,
automation
and
and my redoing my method for ordering, hopefully between those two things, we will see, results that we want.
It's good that it's not months.
Correct.
I mean, that's a good thing.
Some of them are months, and I think that depends on the publisher and when the warehouse is getting the material, because some publishers are still backlogged. So we do have some things that, came out in August that we don't have yet. And I think they're on back order now with Ingram, and I think that's because they haven't received them from the publisher. Or the publisher's manufacturer. So we'll see how things continue to play out. But I know that sounds like small stuff, but for a small library, we take that, thank you for getting it, because I don't want to. We've prided ourselves on that for a long time, so.
So Dina, adults know when the book is going to be out, when it's going to be. Are there ever kids that know the day that a book?
It's got to be a big title, like Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
Okay.
It's the
I
bad
think that would be
guys.
exciting to have a kid who knows
They
the
have. It
I do not
has
have
to
one of
be.
those.
Most people do not have that. Some people do have that, but most people don't. And most kids, that's just none on their radar unless someone tells them, and then they know.
Adults, if you
but they
watch
might not
like
see
talk
that.
shows, they'll have an
Right.
offer and say the book is next week, but I don't know if that happens in the kid world.
Right, and for the big guns it does, but not for most. If Mo Willems is coming out with a new book, then families who love Mo Willems, the parents know he's got a new book coming out.
Okay.
And then they all know about, Jeff Kinney when he's doing a new Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And he also publishes at the same time every year, so the kids who read those books have come to know they're going to come out in October. So it's, so we don't focus on that as much for young adult and kids, but we do with the adult books, because again, when they're coming
I'm
out.
sure they do.
And we create literature, like at the beginning of the month also, telling you these are the books that we've ordered for this month. Get on the holds list now, that kind of thing. So that people know, so that they're at the top of the queue, so that they get it right away. So, like I said, that's something for a small library, we're very pleased that we're able to do that. So hopefully things work out that we can continue to do this. And our patrons are also so great that no one's complaining about it, but we're complaining about it to each other. No one's really questioning us on, hey, why didn't I get that? I was top of the list. Why didn't I get that? But we're saying, why don't we have that?
I think people are starting to understand the supply chain issues, and I think it's everywhere with everything. So I think they're just kind of like, well, it is what it is at this point, and it's what it is everywhere.
Everywhere, right.
Right. So. I was just curious,
Yes, I'm glad
just to
that you
see,
asked.
I didn't know
Thanks
if
for
we were
asking.
waiting on I ordered that in May and we're still waiting for
Oh, no. Anything from last fiscal year is done. Yeah, no, that we've got.
Yeah, okay.
But no, I'd say we're missing one title from July, which has been on back order, I think.
That's not
It's
too
just
bad.
one. And then maybe there's a handful of titles still from August that we don't have.
That's not too bad.
But now what we're waiting for are the September
Okay.
releases. Yeah.
Anything else on the budget at all?
Yeah,
That we have,
a sidetrack.
I know.
Yeah, no, that's
I know.
good.
All right, we just need a motion.
Motion to accept the budget.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. We do not have any old business, but we do have some new business. The first item, crazy as it sounds, we will be discussing snow removal. I know nobody wants to think about that whatsoever. But as you will recall, last February, we were talking about the plan or lack thereof to have the snow removed here at the library. So last week we had met with Town Administrator Kelly, and I'm gonna follow up with him in the next week or two to see what has come out of that. I haven't heard anything. Dina hasn't heard anything, and before it becomes an issue or a problem, I want to try to see where we're at, just to see what the communication's gonna be. I mean, I know that they had said, hey, listen, if who's gonna tell who? I mean, nobody should have to drive here to be like, oh, it's not plowed, to be able to go back home. Like, that's something's got to be able to tell somebody. And then what does that mean for the custodian? Because yes, the library doesn't open until 10:30. People have to be here at 10 or 9 or whatever, 9 on most days, other than the custodian. But the custodian's here at 7:30?
7 a.m.
7 a.m. So now what does that mean for him? Does that mean that, I mean, he's obviously not going to trudge through snow either. So does that mean that the library on those days needs to be plowed before then? How is that going to be communicated to him? I think we need to try to get that set. So,
Can I just add something
Yes.
to that
Please
regarding
do.
the custodian and why that's so important?
mm-hmm.
He doesn't get paid if he doesn't come to work on a snow day. That's in the AFSCME contract for the union staff. That is an old line that should have been removed when the library's union merged with the town hall union back in 2018, I believe. Because when the library was in its own union, and which was created when we were at Russell Memorial, the custodian was expected to do snow removal at Russell Memorial. So if the custodian didn't show up to remove snow, the custodian didn't get paid. But Russell Memorial is a much smaller building, as you all know, or has much less grounds to cover. So, that custodian was doing the walkways and the staircases, and there were 4 parking spots at Russell. And so even if the custodian got 2 parking spots, that was good enough for them at the time. And it was something that union staff had talked about having removed. It didn't get removed when they joined the union, and now this has been 4 years. They've just ratified a new contract, and for some reason, that language is still in there, and it just doesn't make any sense. Because who is communicating before 7 a.m. with our custodian to let him know whether or not he can come here? And numerous times he's had to wait on Middle Road for someone to come here and plow, and that's unsafe for him to do that because perhaps the very busy DPW plowing the roads hasn't had a chance to plow over here yet. So he's also potentially on an unplowed road and then can't drive into the parking lot. He was more than willing to bump his shift and come in later in the day, but again, who's letting him know? He doesn't live in town, he doesn't know what the road conditions are or whether or not the building has been done. If I don't know, I can't communicate that to him. So anyway, that is just to illustrate why that's so important. I was really disappointed when I saw their ratified contract and saw that line still in there. And I have nothing to do with it, so it's not like, no one asked me to weigh in. So anyway, that is what it is, but that's why it's so important to have that straightened out, because the morning is when it's an issue. If the building can't open till say 11 or 12, then the staff who were scheduled to work can bump down, the other staff, but you can't really do that for someone who's scheduled to work 7 to 10, and who should really be working in here when the public isn't here, because we can't have them vacuuming or have running extension cords around or mopping the floor and having a wet floor when there are patrons in the building, which is why he works before hours. So anyway, that's just to...
Jen, are you going to do by phone or are you going to do a meeting?
I'm gonna send an email, a follow-up email. That way, I can, he can respond back, and we can see what what the communication is. I mean, I know that the DPW right now is understaffed, and I know that they're super busy, and when we had met with him, the DPW does come, and we by no means think that we should be at the top of a list or we're trying to get a priority. All we just need is communication to somehow say, hey, listen, once the library is done, is it going to be communicated to Dina to say, hey, it all set, or should be all set by, whatever, or we will make sure that the library's parking lots and walkways are done by 8 a.m. if there's, half an inch of snow or more, or something like that. Because then at least he'll know, he can look out the window, the custodian can look out the window and say, oh, okay, too much snow, I know that I can be there for 8 and it should be done.
Yeah.
That's all, we're asking. And like Dina said, we can delay an opening, he can come in later, absolutely no problem, but how are we gonna know that? And I mean, I know I've had to drive over here because I live close. I've had to drive over here to be like, nope, not plowed yet, or yeah, no problem, because Dina lives in another town, custodian lives in another town, and for them to drive over here, it's especially when you don't know what the road conditions are, it's just not safe for anyone.
Okay.
So, I just think that we need and I'd rather do it now when there's no snow than have to try to figure out a plan.
Absolutely.
So I'll just, I'll follow up, but I'll, make sure that I, copy everyone on the response, and hopefully we'll be able to work it out before we get any snow. Maybe we won't get any snow, and that'd be great. Or maybe it'll just snow only on the grass. I don't know, but at least we'll follow up with that. Does anyone have anything they want me to add to that, or can you think of anything else that I, should touch upon when I send that? Anything that anybody can think of?
Sounds great.
All right, so I will take that. That's my action item to do that, and I'll do that in the next, couple weeks. So hopefully we'll get a response by the next meeting. All right. Moving on to our next item of new business is the revision to the community room policy.
So I sent you the community room policy with the proposed revisions. We revised the policy back in 2018. Some of you were on the board then, so you might remember. We did that because we had been seeing groups with no ties to Acushnet, to the community, no Acushnet members, just really no benefit immediately in our mind to Acushnet. We saw these groups consistently booking the room for, say, the first Monday of the month, for every month, forever. And they would be very disappointed if we decided to book another program for a Monday, and it did, like an actual library program or a town group needed the room. And so for that reason, we revised it so that nonprofit groups could certainly continue to reserve the room, but only 1 month in advance versus 3 months in advance, like we can do for other town groups. The downside to that has been that it limits us booking the room in advance to groups that do have a direct benefit to residents of Acushnet. Like specifically, a good example is scout troops, who need to know that they can have a space, every Tuesday for meetings or every other Tuesday for meetings for a school year. And the way it stands right now, we can't currently grant that. We've made exceptions, and then the room was closed for nearly 2 years, so it didn't seem to matter very much. But now that things are getting back to normal, it feels important to officially acknowledge in the policy that exceptions may be made. So that's what I've added in under reservations, number 1. Requests can be made up to 3 months in advance by Town of Acushnet boards and departments, and 1 month in advance by all other outside groups. That's the way it ends now, but adding in exceptions may be made at the discretion of the library director or library board of trustees. So that's my first proposed change. The second one is something very minute on the application itself. Just to note that the tables are 8 feet long, because oftentimes people will say they need 6 or 7 tables because they're not expecting our tables to be 8 feet long. So they don't really need, first of all, we only have 6 of them, so we can't give them more than 6. But they also don't, expect them to be so long, and if I'm not here when the person's filling out the application, then I have, to reach out and see, do you really need 7 tables, or is 3 okay? And
Right.
usually, of course, 3 is fine. So I figured if it was just noted here, then that would help them make a decision as they're filling out the application.
Makes
So,
sense.
yeah, thanks. So, figure what can we do here to help this process? So that's it. 2 very small changes, but I think that will help going forward, because we are finally starting to see now, especially that the room limit has been increased back up to normal size groups of up to 40 people. Because of that, I think it's a good time to put that language in.
I agree. Does anyone have any questions on that, or anything to discuss?
No.
Add? No? Okay. We just need a motion.
Motion to accept the community room policy as revised?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thanks.
The next item is the children's room assistant position in preparation for the FY24. I can't even believe I even said that. For the FY24 budget.
And I acknowledge that it may be early to start talking about FY24 needs, but I'm really making it my mission to take time in each of our upcoming meetings to stress the need for a full-time children's room staff member. I really am pleading with you all to focus on this now, so that you fully understand the need when budget season does roll around, and if the request needs to be defended on the floor of town meeting, which I don't think I've ever asked in 7 years for a request to be defended on the floor of town meeting, but I will ask you to rally some troops and defend on the floor of town meeting, which is something I can't do as a non-resident. I can get up and speak about it, but I have no say. So I need you all to be the say if it comes to that. Hopefully it doesn't, but I will have some more concrete talking points the next time we meet, but for today I just wanted to highlight a few things. I've said to you before that we're the only library in the network without a full-time children's staff member. Typically, libraries have children's librarians. When we went for the position that we have in 2017 or 18, basically we were told, you're not going to get a children's librarian because the salary, by putting the word librarian in the title, the salary would be too high. So go for an assistant. My huge problem with that is, who's that person an assistant to? Children's room assistant to who? There's no children's librarian to be an assistant to. And we have smaller libraries in the network that have a full-time children's librarian and then an assistant who helps them with programs. Example is Poison, has 3 people working in their children's room. And their circulation is no higher than ours is, and I don't think their program attendance is any higher than ours is. But that said, I've been in touch with most every director in the network to get a better sense of who they have working with children. And I've sort of narrowed things down to be a little more descriptive. So Sales has 36 public library systems, and some of those systems, like in New Bedford and Dartmouth, they have multiple locations. And in those instances, and for these purposes, I'm counting them as one system versus, there's 40 some odd individual locations, but I want to just look at the systems themselves based on the town or city. And of that, we, along with one other library in the network, it's in a similar position as ours, do not have someone full-time working with children. So of that 36, it's us and one other library that doesn't have. And actually, we're not included in that number 36, we're 37. So it's 37 in total. And 2 of us don't have a full-time person. But they're practically in another network. It's Hanson, which they're on the border of Whitman, and they're practically the old Colony Library network. And their children's room circulation and attendance doesn't appear to be nearly as high as ours. So I'll throw that in. But we aren't the only ones. I just don't want to mislead you, I guess is where I'm going with that. For neighboring sales libraries, and for neighboring, I'm looking at New Bedford, Fairhaven, Dartmouth, Lakeville, Rochester, Mattapoisett, Marion. They all have full-time children's room staff. They also have, in some cases, like I mentioned, Mattapoisett, part-time assistants that help that full-time person. Further away, Carver, which is not that much larger than Acushnet, they have 11,645 residents. They have a full-timer plus 2 part-time positions that support that person. Berkeley, which is a town of only 6,764 residents, according to the 2020 census, their position is considered full-time, but it's only 25 hours a week. But it is considered full-time for their town. Whereas Plainville, which has 9,945 residents, has someone at 29 hours, but that's not considered full-time. So our person right now is at 19 hours. Even if she were at 25, that would be a huge help to us. But we're gonna have to push for the 35 hours, which would be full-time.
When you're saying full-time, does that mean benefits?
Yes.
Is that?
That's what,
Okay.
yeah, and I thought that anyone over 20 hours was considered full-time because they're benefited. So for example, Berkeley, that person does receive benefits at 25 hours.
Okay.
And if you're paying out benefits, then you might as well get as many hours out of
Well,
the
right,
staff
right,
person
because
as you
it's-
can if you're already paying the benefits, right? But I guess you could be
Okay.
part-time and still be benefited, so yes, that's, the reasoning for needing this, for us here in Acushnet is our children's print circulation alone consistently makes up for half, if not more, of our total print circulation, which I think just goes to show that the room is an active space. The positions that other libraries have, that person is responsible for ordering all material for the room, preparing and presenting all children's programs from the idea to the advertising to the running of the program, creating displays, providing readers advisory, homework help, outreach to local schools. Our staff member at 19 hours can't do half of that. She might be able to come up with an idea for a program and execute it, but other people are doing the advertising or posting it to social media. And then sometimes there's a little confusion on whether or not something actually got posted because it's not the same person doing it. It doesn't have time to order any material, so that all falls onto me, which is a very labor-intensive process because you're reading reviews, you're checking circulation, there's a lot. You're not just willy-nilly putting titles in a cart and ordering them. You're trying to customize what you're ordering for your readers' wants and needs. So it is time-consuming. And forget homework help or any sort of having anyone in the room when school lets out to help with that because the way the position works now, she's not here after school most days. It's 1 day a week that she's here after school. And I mean, really, the list goes on and on. I think that the other thing I want to stress is that for a long time I felt like the old adage, do more with less, has been applied here to this library, hence why we're in the building that we're in, which I'm not complaining about, but this was not what was wanted initially, by the Board of Trustees and the residents who were supporting a new library. It's what we got. It worked out really well, but like I've told you many times, we've already outgrown the shelf space. We have no room for growth whatsoever. There's no footprint to add things. Even to add an additional table in the children's room would be impossible with ADA compliance. So things like that, we already settled for less when we got this building, which is a beautiful building and has been wonderful. However, I think, a lot of us who work here are tired of settling for less. We're asking for something very small. We have not requested one article, aside from the septic, which we didn't request. A former town administrator requested it, and it's been sitting there for years because they haven't done anything with it. We haven't requested money from the town. This building was renovated with existing funds. It came at no cost to taxpayers. I think a request to have benefits for one full-time person isn't a lot to ask for. And it would just allow the position to do so much more, particularly outreach to the schools and a better promotion of literacy to children in this town, period. And I don't know why people are against that, and I do feel that there are people who make decisions here who don't feel that that's important, and that's shocking to me. So, anyway, the other selfish perspective that I just want to point out is that our current strategic plan runs through the end of FY23. So at some point in the next year, your library director will need to begin working on the next strategic plan. And I know from working on this plan in 2016 and 17 that it requires a lot of work, and about 50% of the director's time will be spent focusing on working with community leaders and other stakeholders, brainstorming with local organizations and neighboring libraries, crafting the new goals, objectives, and actions to present to you all for approval. So your library director won't be able to focus nearly as much on the children's room and services and programs as your current director does. And that space and what it does for the community has grown so much since 2017 when the last plan was written, that to keep current levels of service, I don't even think would be possible right now with the way things stand now. To focus and to do a strategic plan well, which why would you do a strategic plan unless you're gonna, if you're gonna not do it well, why would you bother doing it? We are required to do it by the state, so some might say, well, then don't do one. Well, we're required to do it, so we'll do it. But in order for it to be done well, it's going to need a lot of time and a lot of focus. And current levels of service might drop as a result of that if we don't have the support that we need. And the support that we need comes in a full-time children's room assistant, which I prefer to call a children's librarian, but the way it stands right now, we can't. But I guess maybe get it to full-time and then try later on to change. But anyway, so I will have more concrete talking points for you, like I said, at an upcoming meeting. But I am going to mention this at every meeting because I really just need you to hear me and hear what I'm saying. And that for this library, this should be one of your top priorities as a board, is to rally behind getting a full-time staff member in the children's room. Because if not, there's no guarantee that something that we pride ourselves so much on is going to continue, and that's what we do for children of not only Acushnet but surrounding communities and their families. So anyway, that's my soapbox plea, and I'll continue in the future.
So is that including the hours that she's already got as 19?
She
and
works 19,
putting it
so
up to
we want
35.
16
That's
more
not
hours.
adding an extra 35.
Nope, it's
Nope.
16
So-
more hours to an
okay.
existing position. And what the pitfall for that was last year, we were told very explicitly, was there's no money for benefits.
Okay.
And I understand benefits do place a burden, but if you value your employees and if you value your departments, and you have one department asking for a full-time position, and a department that's open 45 hours a week to the public. We're in here more hours than 45 hours, but we're providing direct service to the public 45 hours a week, and we have 2 part-time positions. It doesn't make any sense. There are other departments in town that open less hours and don't directly serve the public in the way that we do, that have more full-time positions. So looking for one more full-time position that's benefits for one position. And that shouldn't be the reason why you can't get a full-time children's librarian. It just should not, children's room assistant. It shouldn't be that you can't have that because of benefits. Because other positions have been, approved in assistant positions that have been approved for something that to me, is certainly important to that department, but doesn't have the positive impact that having a full-time person here working 35 hours a week focused on what we need that position to focus on would change things so much, like for the services that we're able to offer. And we do offer a lot, and we're very fortunate that we're able to do that. But again, we've been doing more with less. Your director spends most of her time, not most of her time anymore, now that we have the children's room assistant. But I still spend way more time than I expected to doing things that a children's librarian should be doing. And that's not my job. So a lot of things that I'm supposed to be doing get put on the back burner because I'm focused on, making good use of the town's money when I purchase material, like making sure that we need what's being bought. And, also the downside to that too is a children's librarian develops a relationship with the patrons using the library. Because I'm not out on the floor all the time, I know these people and I say hi to them, but I might not know what someone really wants, or what a child might be looking for to read, but a children's librarian would know that because they'd be having direct contact with them when they come in. So, there's a lot of pluses to it, which I hope that, we'll be able to flush out over the next couple of months so that other people will see the importance of it.
Not to mention the school outreach too.
School outreach is huge.
She has absolutely no time to do any of that. And so then you're doing the school outreach, which is fantastic. However, people see you, they know you, and if you were to ask any of the kids at that elementary school, and we're talking about Acushnet, never mind, Acushnet Elementary, never mind St. Francis, because we don't even get to tap into that.
Right.
But if you ask them about who they recognize as the librarian at the library, it's you.
Right.
It's not the children's room assistant.
Right.
And not that that's a bad thing. However, they should recognize her.
Mm-hmm.
But how can they recognize her if she's not here
Right.
or able to be here?
Right. And the school outreach is so important to me, and I'm so grateful that we've turned a corner with that, and we really have made some serious progress, that I'm not going to say no anytime
Oh,
an
absolutely.
administrator or a teacher asks me to do something with the school. I'm not going to say no. So then what I'm going to do is go in early to do what they need me to do, and then I'm going to come here and do my job, and I'm going to work over 35 hours a week, which happens all the time.
Mhm.
And hey, that's my fault. I'm not blaming that's not anyone who makes decisions for this town's fault. That's my fault. But that's because I'm dedicated to doing the job well. And that requires, unfortunately, working 40 or 45 hours, because I'm not just doing the library director's job. I'm doing a children's librarian's job. And like I've said before, and I have no plans on leaving because I love working for this town. But like I've said before, you have a director right now with a youth services background. If I didn't have a youth services background, I would not have pushed nearly as hard for the things that have happened in this room, in the children's room rather. I would not have pushed for programs. It's because that's where I come from. That's my background. And I think that's part of the reason why I was hired in 2015 was because I had that background and there was nobody doing children's programs. And they knew that was going to be needed when this library opened. So I think that's what gave me an edge in 2015. However, I left that for a reason and wanted to become a director for a reason. And it's not that I think you all know, I don't have to say, I love working with kids and families, and I love aspects of that job, but that's not my job anymore. And yet I do spend a lot of time focused on that, and I'd like to spend a little bit less time focused on that so I can focus on other things, like finding a grant for hotspots, like just little things like the strategic plan. What else can we be doing? What other community, outreach can we be doing aside from the schools? How do we connect with St. Francis? There's so much more that I could be doing. How do we reach, members of this community that aren't using the library? How do we reach them? There's so much more that I could be doing, but I don't have the time to do. And I feel that with a full-time children's room assistant or whatever it's called, we could certainly, move forward in a very positive direction. And again, to backpedal, if you have another director in the future, I could be here for 30 years, whatever, but if I'm not, your next director might not care nearly as much about youth services. You may not find somebody who has the knowledge or the background that I came with. And that might fall by the wayside, and I would be so sad to see that happen, and I would hope that you would be as well, because this current staff has worked so hard, current and previous staff who have left for full-time positions, I'll keep saying that. We worked so hard to build this up, so to see that go would be really, I think, crushing to staff and crushing to people who use this library. So, something to keep in mind also. And again, I don't say that because I never want you all to feel like I'm very grateful to the board and I love this community, which is why I would stay here and why I have no plans to leave here. But I still think it's important to mention because it may not always be this way. And, you know, I've said since day one, I want to leave, and I think most people feel this way in their careers. I want to leave this a better place than it was when I got here, and it is a better place, but I know it can be so much better, and it's a small request to make it better. So you don't want to build us a brand new library. So you don't want to add an addition. Fine, okay, I've made my peace with that. But you can at least give us a full-time position. So that's
I agree
that.
with
So
that.
stay tuned.
Right, stay tuned. Does
And
anyone have any
hopefully-
questions? Is there anything to add?
Hopefully one of you can say that more cohesively than I can, because I also get a little emotional about it, and then I lose my cohesiveness. So.
I think it was fun.
Oh,
I
thank
think,
you.
I think you did well.
Thanks.
I think you definitely, I mean, those definitely great points. I think it's definitely needed. I think you do way more than you should or than you should have to. And we'll do everything that we can to try to make that happen.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we will definitely revisit that. I think we should make it a standing agenda item. We'll definitely work that into our budget for FY24, and we'll do what we need to do to advocate for that for here. Everybody agree?
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, we will do that.
Thank you.
Including standing up at town meeting,
Mhm.
even though that sounds terrifying.
Maybe it won't come to that. Maybe we can be so persuasive that it won't even come to that.
Fingers crossed. Okay, your director's report.
Okay, so first I provided you with statistics for July and August. At the last meeting, I provided you with July statistics, but they said July 2021, and also I forgot to include program statistics, because it had been so long since we had any notable program statistics. So I gave you July, and then on the back side is August. So as far as August goes, it was fairly consistent with past Augusts, and fairly consistent with July for the most part. We typically see a drop in circulation from July to August every year, so it was no different this year. And it was interesting to see that for August, our circulation overall was not all that much higher than it had been in 2021. But it's certainly getting us back in line, with where we were before COVID. And I do think it's, really sitting down and looking at it. In August of 2021, we'd finally been reopened for 2 months. People were certainly coming out a lot more. So I think that's why our numbers are so high from 2021. I kind of forgot about that. But anyway, I think our stats are good. So that's the first part. As far as the rest of the report, I did mention that I had attempted to troubleshoot some issues with our photocopier, and when I couldn't fix them, I ended up reaching out to Core Business Technologies. The Friends have been paying for an annual contract with Core for a number of years, and so the technician was able to come out, take a look. He found replacement parts for the problems we were having. There was 2 or 3 issues happening, but he did advise that it will be harder to find replacement parts for that model as time goes on. So we've had that copier since 2004.
Wow.
It works really well for what we need it to do. It's certainly not fancy. It doesn't copy in color, but it does work really well for the people who come in who just need to photocopy their license for something, or who want to photocopy a recipe from a book that they borrowed. And that's what we're mainly seeing people do. I think most people have come to understand that if they need, double-sided color prints for something they want to hand out, they should probably go to Staples. But another plus to the system we have now is that, we're able to charge 10 cents a page for photocopies, which is a huge bargain for people who just want to photocopy their license. And, certainly when the day comes that we have to replace that copier, we are not going to be able to charge 10 cents for photocopy, most likely. So we've had issues with the photocopier before. I don't really tend to talk about it, but because he advised that it's going to be harder, like he actually said the words, this is going to be harder as time goes on, I just wanted to make sure I note that, so that if I do come to you in the future and say, hey, we need a new photocopier, you're not, well, you never mentioned that there was a problem with the photocopier before. So I just wanted to have that in the back of your mind somewhere. I'm sure that will take really a top spot in the back of your minds. I also mentioned that I've begun researching the pros and cons of becoming a fine-free library. We've touched upon this a little bit in the past, but I've been reviewing our revolving fund and also taking a look at what other libraries in the area are doing. And so just a heads up that you should expect this to be an agenda item in the future. I'm hoping by the end of this year to put it out to you and give you some concrete reasons as to why we should or shouldn't do it. But I will say I am leaning towards recommending that we go fine-free for most material. For bigger items like the museum passes that are quite expensive, and other library of things type items like our telescope, we would probably keep charging fines for bigger things, but in terms of books and DVDs, I imagine I'm going to be saying, let's consider this. So I'll come back with that hopefully in the next month or two. Okay. And I'm working on the financial report for the state, and I expect to be done with that by next Friday. It's taking me a little bit longer than I'd hoped for because Sandra was out on vacation, and unfortunately the same week she was out on vacation, we had 2 staff members who were sick. So we were very short-staffed last week. I worked 6 days, so that the financial report was not on my radar, but it will certainly be done by next Friday, the latest. It's due by the 7th, so we have plenty of time. In terms of what's happening in the children's room, Melissa's going to resume story time on Wednesday, October 5th. She took the month of September off at my recommendation so that she could sort of regroup and replan, again, because she's only here 19 hours a week. You just don't walk into a room with books and just present story time willy-nilly. I'm using that expression. Where did I hear that? But that's on my radar. But anyway, you just don't do that. There's a lot of prep involved when you want to do it well, and she does a great job. So she will be resuming that on October 5th. She's also scheduled what she's dubbing a Halloween carnival for Saturday, October 22nd from 10 to 12:30, and that's going to include some simple games out on the back lawn, weather permitting, and there will be 2 story times, one with Melissa at 10:30 for ages 3 and up, and then a slightly more sophisticated story time with a local performer who goes by the name Penny Dreadful, and she is going to do an older story time for ages, I believe, 5 and up. We will have info about that very soon, so people can take a look at the website for that. She's also going to do a Halloween-themed pajama story time on Tuesday, October 25th. This is the first time that someone who is not me is doing the Halloween-themed pajama story time. So though I'm telling you, please, we need a full-time children's librarian, I'm kind of sad to give that up, but this is me trying to let go and pass the torch. So she's going to do that Halloween program for us. And in the past, that was always well attended. We haven't done it since 2019, so here's hoping we get a good turnout for that. We do plan to participate in the Acushnet Teacher Association's Trunk or Treat event in October. So that's exciting and something to look forward to. The Friends of the Library are meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, September 21st at 6:30. Anyone is invited to attend that meeting. I doubt people will see this meeting, if anyone's watching this meeting. I doubt anyone will see it before Wednesday, September 21st, but if you do, that's happening at 6:30. They're going to be talking about doing their annual membership drive, which is something they typically start a little bit earlier, but the friends, they're regrouping after COVID, and it's a little bit later than usual, but not much. I have been talking with Kristen, and I agreed that I would remind everyone that trustees can be members of the Friends too. You don't have to be an active participant, but you could certainly donate as little as $10 a year to the Friends group. So I'm reminding that and just putting that out there. Let's see, in terms of other announcements, I'm doing a repeat mention that Chronicle reporter Ted Reinstein will be coming back to the library on Wednesday, September 28th at 6:30 to promote his latest book, Before Brooklyn. And that's funded through the State Aid to Public Libraries program. And in October, we have two events that we think will be really popular with our adult patrons. Local journalist Maureen Boyle will be returning to discuss her latest book, which is The Ghost, on Wednesday, October 12th at 6 p.m. She was here last in 2018, I believe, to talk about her book on the highway killings. And we had standing room only. We had people on the deck with the windows open so that they could hear what she was saying. So I expect that she's going to have a good turnout. And then Tim Weisberg, who has a local program on WBSM called Spooky South Coast, he'll be returning with a new program to us called Haunted Objects on Wednesday, October 26th at 6 p.m. And people are able to bring an object that they think might be haunted, and he will have equipment in which he can, help determine whether or not it might be. And he does say that he'll be able to tell us whether or not Marie Howard, who this building was originally named for, if she's still around. The staff affectionately refer to Marie every now and then when something is a little misplaced in the building. So we'll see. He says he can. So that's on Wednesday, October 26th at 6 p.m. And both of those programs, Maureen Boyle and Tim Weisberg, those programs are funded by the Friends of the Library, so we appreciate them doing that for us, and we encourage people to come out. But they'll both be posted on Facebook soon, so you can look for event postings or look at acupl.org. So other than that, that's what I've got for today. It's a little bit longer than I thought, but less than some others. So we're doing okay.
Anybody have any questions, comments on the director's minutes? No? Okay. Do we want to set the next meeting?
I have our schedule is a little tight in October, but I have two possible dates, and so we can go with what you think is best. I'm looking at either October 4th, which I know is just like 2 weeks away, or October 18th, both at 4 p.m. They're both Tuesdays. Fall town meeting is October 17th at 7 p.m. So if you're planning on attending that, which I hope you might be, I will be there. You might not want to come to a meeting on October 18th at 4 p.m. because you might still be resting from October 17th. But I know the 4th is close, so I certainly understand if that's not a great date for people.
I can't do the 4th.
Oh, great. Okay.
So I don't know if that changes the dynamic, but I will not be here on the 4th. Okay. I can do the 18th if that works for everyone else.
That works.
That works for
Does
me
that
as
work?
well.
Okay.
Okay, so we will do Tuesday, October 18th at 4 o'clock?
Yes.
4 o'clock.
Great.
Perfect. Okay. And if that is all, I think that changes the, just need a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. The September 20th, 2022 meeting of the Acushnet Library Board of Trustees is officially adjourned. It is 4:55. Thank you.